I am known as Salas, one of the apostles, as Ramon. Just like Ramon, we started a lot before we had a modem. We started doing hacking the hardware of our computers, and it was in 1986 when we got hold of a modem, and we got to meet. We met each other with Ramon in a chat, and it was a gay chat. He was in France. Well, there were no chats in those days. So the first thing I asked was a gay hacker. So that is where we met, and we created apostles. So in these early days, when we didn't have access to TCP/IP or anything like that. So as for that, we started fooling around a lot. We both had BBS. Does anyone know what a BBS is? And after we set up our DSP copies, and he was in Zaragoza, and we set up RootedPanel, we then kept on with the apostles and TCP/IP. We did some exploits. And after that, well, I worked on programming. I'm an architect. I do security stuff, but for developers. I do security for it to be used. I don't play around with it. Okay, half of presentation is just about the same. I landed in computers through electronics. My mother was a shortwave radio enthusiast. So she was fond of radio more than electronics. So when the time came to choose what I wanted to do, I was playing around with displays and my first computer was an Oricuno, which didn't last very long. Does anybody know what an Oricuno is? I think I was one of the few owners of this device. So then people started buying Spectrum. I switched it. I exchanged a Spectrum for Orokami. So with a Spectrum, I got to connect it to the radio. RTTT at 45 baud. You could read up to 300 baud, but at 45 it was one character after the other. But it was good. You could use the keyboard and talk to people. It was much faster using a telegram, actually. Anyway. Seeing letters in the computer was really cool, and we had that. Afterwards, we started playing the war games, and we were really amazed at these things. Anyway, then we had the period of modems coming around, the abusive monopolistic prices of Telefonica to use the phone. Accordingly, we had to find a way to call for free. We got the quality wasn't that good, but never mind. We could even record our conversations. That was good. Does anyone do the military service here? Yeah, when we did the military service, we took the Walkman with the cassette tapes with the names recorded and the counter. So then you had all the numbers. So the Walkman on the trousers, you changed you put the earphone, you reached the booth, you set up a number, you dialed a free information number. You got some and people would get angry because we kept in the booth so long, and then I used to tell them I was calling reverse call, charge collect. So the only communication we had through the modem, you had to put even your radio identifier. Michel left of glaucoma, there was from a hackers group of Zaragoza. So once we had a modem, it was easier. Then we had the RX25. This was point-to-point communications. And we also set up the party line. Now you take the team speaker and you talk to everybody. In those days it was different. I used to call Mitchell, Mitchell would call Jordi, Jordi would call Enrique, and we were setting up bridges between the lines. I lived in the country and people knew where I lived for the number of cables I had. So we made a sort of a party line. The problem was when someone fell asleep and you couldn't disconnect the line. So from then we went to X25. So then we started to, this morning they were talking about the ARPANET. We went into that quite a lot, the ARPANET, so we jumped over the internet. We didn't know really what it was, and then we find a machine with a modem. We called the BBS from there, so the communication was slower than through the radio, the 45 baud rate. So after that, the post-TCP/IP period, which I think I'll leave it up to you, which is when you came in. I started in the time of the TCP/IP in the mid-90s. I started, I think all of us got hooked with it. In the end, that was the only thing we had. Access to modems was limited, but in the end you could find a way to get someone to give it to you in your home, being a teenager. So then you had the IRC, and it was what brought us together as a community here in Spain, and what made us work as a group instead of being loners. For me, our group of hackers is a group of friends for me, and we spent some really good times. My name is Antonio, and I also have a group of friends of Hispanics. My alias is Roman, and so here we are. This is what you were saying. I started with computers not directly, because my father was a radio enthusiast, and he spent hours on the radio, connected and talking to many people in Citizens Band. So then it was great because you got to talk to many people, and it was cool. So then you could share files through the TLF. That was 1200 baud rate. That was amazing. Packages in X25 packets. So yeah, I had a file, and you used to see the line. If you failed, everything went green, so then you had to resend it, maybe 1.5 hours to send a file. The simple fact of communicating was great. Like in war games. It's just that the computer didn't talk. That was the only thing that was missing. So to download a file in 10 minutes that had less than 1 kilobyte, well, that was prehistoric. So it also occupied a lot of memory. So nowadays, when we started with the late 90s with the modems, we said, wow, this is incredible. I started with computing because my father was a radio enthusiast, and then we started with Spectrum, etc. And then telephone lines, modems, with these abusive fees and prices that they charged. So So I got in touch with a number of groups, more in favor of blue boxes, and some use this. Then this evolved because we have the calling cards. In the end, so then you get together with a group of friends, and you have many common interests. Some projects may turn out, others not. As Jordi was saying, we can't make a split. Well, this can be really good, but then we get someone who does exactly the same. So, things like that, you know. So, in the end, you get together with people who are like-minded. So then you investigate together with them. This is what brought us all together. Each one has their own story to tell, but anyway, that's the way I started. And I'm proud of it. My name is Andreu, my alias, also known as Tanis. I'm part of the old guard. I was in Isbahak for some time, and I started in 5th of the secondary school. I got hold of a computer. It was an 8086. I started with an Amstrad, and I enjoyed messing around with the operative system instead of playing. So I had a professor in computing that was very enthusiastic. He made a radio link with a town nearby. So I thought this was a joke. Then I thought it was real. So then we had this Micromania, this magazine, Micromania. I had a pile this high of that magazine, and they talked about the DDF and modem. So I asked for a modem, my parents, and they bought me one in 1995. My father died in those days, and I was studying second year of secondary school. So I just had to start to work on the family business. And we had a farm, a pig farm. And then in my free time, I read a book about Unix and free frame. So I started working with IRC. So I was doing all these things in the pig farm. The good thing is that you connect through an AX400 to a group in Lerida that wasn't Jordi's group. I met him later, and we didn't have the IFC together with the IRS, so this is a photograph. I have a bit of everything. Here I have a Judas right in the middle of the group. Well, I have more things there. Anyway, there's one that is called Masinji or something like that. The thing is that I met people from the IRC, the old guard, the hacking, war games. Was really cool. But then Jordi did some very good things. There he is. So you look great there. Afterwards, he will tell us about the antenna. So I still had hair on my head in those days, and that's it. And this took this picture today. Well, years later, in the end, you create groups of friends. What you do now, but my professional career started working in ISP, local modem access to info via network. And when I got into system, then what I liked the most was to take care of it and make it pretty. I became good friends with the sysadmins. So I had a poster from a US university. Anyway, the thing is that I worked there, and then I ended up working in a US multinational. It's a great picture, Jordi. So with this, we mapped the entire city of Lerida with this telescopic antenna. So I ended up working in a box. So if you don't call it that way, okay. So in the end, I involved, and one of the members had an accident. Well, I had an accident. I have a disability. I am the lame member of the group, so they make fun of me a lot. So here I'm talking with Roman. So I was wondering, shall I come, shall I stay? So with Fermin, we talked a lot, because in ISPA hacks, there was like 3 or 4 left of us. But I do remember fondly the period of IRC, because we didn't have any documents or documentation like now. I had to pay like over 100 euros in 1995 for a book. It was really expensive, and it was in English to boot. So what they taught you in English, you learned in school, was very poor. So at my age, well, when I got books in Mexican jargon, so I had to pay like over 150 euros for that book, and it was all in Mexican Spanish, incomprehensible.
Yes, Mexican Spanish was very difficult for us to understand. I had Atari 2600, so a Chinese person has translated user's manual, and I would never forget about what it said in the first place, which was just an absurdity in Spanish. Okay, that's not translated into English. So Holmes also remember another awful translation, okay, which was very frequently found in user's manual. So, Jordi, what defines you as a hacker? What makes you different as a hacker? Well, actually, my mindset, I have a twisted mind. I cannot really think normally. So I have this lateral intelligence that I use it for everything. I also use it with people. So it is not that I use it with code or with in my career. I'm twisted. So yes, I'm sure that you can hack anything. And what about you, Ramon? Well, very similar to him. When someone tries to analyze something, they do something very complicated for that. And well, me, right from the start, when I could see the analysis to be made, I had already clear in my mind, and it took just a couple of lines. So it's kind of lateral creative thinking. So when you get to see a solution with blockchain, I say, what is this mess? And that type of thinking is not an engineering thinking, it's an artist thinking. It is closer to the thinking of an artist or of a sculptor. Engineers are meant to do things in the easiest possible manner and in the most efficient manner. Well, actually, software should be creative. Our hackers have to be creative. Actually, it's about lateral thinking. And then we also said believing in doing or making evil or making bad. So sometimes we were not fine enough, and then, well, it was the dividing line between good and bad was very blurred. Yeah, and also passion. At the time we have a big curiosity, but we didn't have like huge technical capabilities because we were not trained. Whereas nowadays, young people could become really good hackers over a short period of time. Whereas at that time, you used to learn from others' mistakes. So we all made lots of mistakes, and I think that this is shared by all of us. And actually, what defines me or defines us as hackers is at the end of the day this strong curiosity that we have about very many things, not only IT issues. So nowadays when you're doing something, say, can I do this differently? I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I see her, and I said, look, she is making social engineering. So she wants it, and because she wants it, she finds a way to get it. Yeah, any child does that nowadays. So it's that curiosity, that's what drives you forward. When you wonder whether you could do what you're doing differently. You may realize that there is no other way to do it, but you've tried it. And Andre, I fully agree with my colleagues have just said, and I feel that, like most of you, we are driven by passion. When I gave the presentation about hacking, I said that hackers are those who make what they do or work with passion. So I had a strong vocation, and then I had a hog farm, but I had a vocation for IT. And then challenges. And I said, well, it's a challenge. Well, apparently you cannot do it, but perhaps over time I can do it. If someone tells you, no, you cannot do it, why not? So give me reasons for that. I never like to put up barriers or to others to put up barriers to me. And that's it. I don't have a career in security. However, I have exploited all my knowledge, and I have always motivated people around me to go for that passion. Passion takes you to excellence, and excellence is one of the terms that defines hackers, as well as them being stubborn. And any big mistakes that are prescribed now? Yeah, I can share one. I like very much making trace routes, and the last IP stuffed in a router. Firewalls existed. Well, only few people had firewall. So I did that in Guardia Civil, and the last IP was a router. I can see you coming. No, well, Anselmo, we will not mention Anselmo here. So it was a Telefonica router. The name of it was Hercules. And those routers had a failure in the logging. I cannot remember. When you got it, there were some milliseconds where you could detect whether the system existed in the system or not. I was checking different users, until I found the user with no password. So the brute force was the only thing that I could do. And then the password was admin DDT was, well, it took me a couple of minutes to crack it. Then I logged in, but at that time, whenever I could see that the router was from Cisco, I was extremely happy. So it was even better than sex at that time. And then I started to play around with it, because obviously there was no documentation. Tap, tap, that was documentation, and everything you could learn by trying it out and playing around with it. And then, oh, this bank, this other bank, oh, this is a huge, big router. Okay, I'll take a look inside and see the traffic going through it. and then debug, lots of verbosity added to it, and then it just crashed. And then the website of Guardia Civil also crashed, and then the big mess. Well, the thing is that the next day it went back to being online, and the password remained to be the same. Okay, continued to be the same. So I learned that you don't have to click on verbosity anymore. And then that taught me how to introduce routes, okay? And then I stopped there. I won't tell you any more about it. So I learned a lot. Any other thing that you'd like to share? Prescribed run, please. Well, my last exploit was 21 years ago. Well, you cannot travel to Indonesia. You are forbidden. What about toxin? Well, I mentioned that in my presentations. I was fortunate to work with Jordi for 7 years. I learned a lot from him. And when I talk about hackers in Spain, I always talk about him. And then I tell people about glaucoma or IRC, and well, Jordi lives in a smaller village than myself. And then the presentations, I give them locally, and people are very surprised at hearing what he did. He warned the military in Indonesia what months in advance. And then he made a remote exploit, which was really frightening. Yeah, for that campaign, that was a very, very big exploit. So he said, I will hack you. And he was not a big mouth. He did it. So we did this campaign, Indonesia, these military assassins in East Timor. The Indonesians invaded half of the island. They were killing people. That was a big mess. And then some Portuguese hacked by machine, and I found that the way they did it was very interesting. They left a file, and then with the failure of the telnet, they did a payload of the library.so. I've never seen that, and I took a look at the IP of the hacker. I wrote to him, he answered, and then we started talking. He was a Portuguese guy, member of a group known as Toxin, and we said, okay, let us make a campaign about this topic. And they had a very nice graphical design, and I very much liked the design, much more than the actual campaign. So I decided to create tools for that campaign. Kesu is a program that detected remote OSs as DMAP does, but without logging into the machine or anything. That was made for that specific campaign to map Indonesia. Also some changes. So from in Indonesia, from the domain, we had information about everything that had a name to it. That was, we could see that there was lots of Red Hats there, and that there was a failure in the IMAT of Red Hat. It had been published a few months ago, but there was no exploit for it. It was a bit complicated to make. So it had to be compatible in lowercase letters. So we made it, we tried it, and it was very successfully. And we used it all throughout the campaign, with the exception of the last machine that was of the owners. So we took a look at it, and we thought it was NetFB. And I said, this is a firewall, this is a proxy. So surely they have Linux, and back they have a web server with a failure MSA and made an exploit, a tailor-made exploit for that. I thought that I was guessing that it was Linus, and I was right. One day I logged in and I replaced it, and then they noticed it. They turned the computer off. The next day they logged in again. It was my saint's day. It was St. George's. I logged in again, and then I changed the website, and then they decided to close it down forever. So they organized a special security conference. So a big mess was created. I can remember the IMAP exploit because you passed it on to Ramon 2 or 3 days before, and we made a script with Alta Vista machines. So that exploit was a huge responsibility of the past. Yes, actually, it was the first time I saw an exploit with the netcats. In it, I've never used a netcat before. Yes, I used it because I just wanted to save up some code. And then the IMAP was left open by default. Yes, it was big. At that time, there was no software update. I've always said that every time I listen to presentations and attend talks, I can see that high level of expertise that we have nowadays. At the time, there was no documentation. As I said, you had to play around with everything. So we are talking about two different worlds. Yet what we are doing nowadays is just awesome. Just get lost right away. So the fuging, I say, what is fuging about? And then I say, what is all that? So I patched exploits, I compiled things in different systems, I entered rootkits, modified rootkits, but what you are doing right now, I'd like to congratulate you every year. I learn more and more from you, and I'm actually an addict to RootedCON. Anything else you'd like to share? Well, there are some cowards here that don't want to show up. Yeah, well, many times we did things together. So we started the two of us, then we got together with others, then we had a beer, sometimes we overdid it. So once we took over a pharmaceutical company, and then I said, okay, let's turn off the computers and as well as the mobile phones, and then, well, let us see what happens with the pharmaceutical company. So then on Tuesday, I checked that out from another mobile phone that I had, and then it was lifted, it was started again. And everything remained the same. Every time we ran out of power codes, we just scanned some of them. And then at that time, we thrived a lot. We learned a lot. We didn't have lots of documents. It was trial and error, going deeper and deeper to see what we could find. So using and reading over and over again old text files, but we learned from each other, from awful configurations. So no one did anything. And once you were in, you have taken over the machine because we took good care of the machine. The machine was down. So once we left a unique machine, it was off for a month. So 1 month later, it went back live, and then you continue to log in with root. So places that were very, very serious, unthinkable. So big military places with awful passwords, with awful configurations. It took us days to log in because it was trial and error, playing around, exploring, trying this and that. And actually, when I read the book, someone flew over the cuckoo's nest, and I say, oh my God, this is the way things were back in the 70s or later than the 70s. So we started to have this curiosity, so to speak. We were very happy because we could identify the operating system. And I said, this is wonderful. So we were passionate about. So Nmap, it was one of the first versions. So we were delighted with the IMAP exploit. That was a delight. It was kind of interactive. It was not a question of executing it. 100 didn't work, 200 didn't work, 300 it worked. So it was not only executing it, it was testing it and trying it all the time. Oh yeah, then there was a problem with Mossad, with Israel. Well, Mossad, okay, it was just collateral damage. So the thing is that there was a German person with a machine Linux contact. So he was launching against all the top-level domains, and he was classifying those machines, or the OS of each machine. So we, Linux people, we wanted to find out whether there were more Linux servers than MSD servers or Windows servers. I was one of those PMSD servers. Linux Context was a German guy, and he only did that graph. To set up that machine at that time, it was not as easy as nowadays just to get a hosting. He was giving a space in a machine known as Beirut.net. So we already had the Germans and the Lebanon machine. He was running top-level domains, and then the Israel one came in. So it was going through it, running it. I don't know whether it was fortunate or unfortunate. So these organized packages were sent out. So there were traces from the Lebanon.net machine in the Mossad in Israel. And actually, because they were sharing the provider, they thought it was an attack, and that the whole government and all the institutional machines were being attacked. So this man was detected and said, well, we are using this tool that showed you the website. It was just black and green. And the sentence was, I'm not saying that Bill Gates is a demon. And then they said, well, this must be this is fishy. We thought that it couldn't go through firewalls, but in the end it was proven that the packages went through the firewall. Or perhaps it went through a firewall, then in the back office firewall they could see that something was going wrong. I used to send in packages, and they were poorly designed, they were poorly made. I was not expecting at all to log in, to connect. So I just wanted to check the TCP stack and then the status of the stack machine on the other side. So I was by sending different and strange packages, you got different answers. And then we were successful. And then Alan Cox, it took months for him to change the stack so that you wouldn't ever find it. In every single version, he was just adding different or changing the stack. Yeah, he used to number the stacks as well. So now a complicated question. This morning, we said that RootedCON is an absolutely neutral space. We have no ideology stand. So we invited 9 de Anon for them to share their opinion with us or to tell us what they are doing. We may also invite civil guard or national police forces if they are part of our community, if we feel that they are part of our community. What about the ideology in your case? Well, in my case, I'm an activist. I've been an activist for many years. I started my political activism simultaneously to my first computer. That was back in the 84. So this is, ever since then, I've been having the Catalonian flag that I take with me to demonstrations, and I've always been in hacking issues as an activist. From the activism, or the activism that I make. So they needed us to support them if they need my expertise. Ever when they needed my help, I helped them. So, well, please tell us about prescribed things that you did. No, I didn't do anything illegal. But at the level of activism, so I just shared my knowledge, or I just lend my knowledge. So in terms of activism, so I know that you wanted to ask me where is the red line. Well, the maximum or the worst thing that I did was this thing of this Indonesian campaign that was about it. So my limits are very clear. I will not be attacking anyone. That doesn't really make sense to me. And what about the rest of you? You may be an activist in some things, but over time we are both, well, those of us on the right and on the left are moving towards the center. Well, I am a voluntary reservist. And at the same time, I also teach radio to students on campus. To me, this hacktivism, yes, that's it. It's the same thing, but on the other side, perhaps. I'm saying this because I say, well, many groups, so 9, they do very cool things, but sometimes they are an actual danger. So that's one thing. Take you to another? Well, you put your knowledge and expertise at the disposal of those causes that you believe in. Well, I think that depends on the actual person. In our group, we have people from a wide ideological spectrum. So there are people who are very much in favor of making our technological hacking knowledge at the disposal of cause that you support. So I differentiate my political ideology and my hacking expertise. So to me, these are two completely different things. My ideology is a personal thing, whereas hacking is a passion for me. Antonio now? So I share what Juanma has just said. So our group is really, really plural. So we have the widest possible spectrum. Yes, we even have people who do not tolerate gluten. So at the end of the day, this is a question of respect. So people of all ages, of 29 years old, 42 years old, all ages. So we've all have gone through different life stages. When you are 18 or 19, you are driven by different type of ideology or ideas. When you see abuses from power, from the government, from the media, when you are 18 years old, you want to contribute, you want to add your grain of sand to stop that, to counteract that. That is your ideology, and you really want to help there. 20 years later, down the road, perhaps that cause is not as big or is not as bad as you thought they were, because now you are driven by other type of interest. And when Franco died, we were 6 years old. So we went through transition, demonstrations in the streets. So people of our age at that time used to mobilize themselves more. So So at that time, we didn't even read the newspaper to find out about what was happening. We just heard it from our neighbors who had been impacted. Jordi was a member of a political party. I asked him to join the political party. Yes, then I was kicked out of that political party. I've always been in favor of Catalonian independence. So it is a strong feeling that I have since I was small, when I was 16 years old. That sentiment did not interfere with anything that I did at that time. I had that if when I was 16, what happened here last year would have happened, surely I would have been in trouble. So I'm 40 years old now. I continue to be in favor of independence, but I do not hate anyone. I can sit down with very many people with different ideology, different viewpoints, and talk to all of them. And now I have a limit, and the limit has been set by my age. And then I'm a member of CDR, of course. And I've always thought that access to knowledge should be a free thing. And it's one of the premises that we set ourselves as hackers. And if we ever have a doubt about someone, or if someone needs me, I will be there, ready to help, that I will never harm anyone. Of course, there are things that are to be discussed and debated, and I'm open and ready for that. When people ask me to do a different thing, I turned it down. I refused it because there are some limits. I have some more personal limits.
So I don't play those games. So this connects with a question about something that happened to Ramon. It was about gray hat against black hat and gray hair.
Es el resumen esto.
Sí. Es un poco el... Ha salido en varias ocasiones. Me hace mucha gracia porque esto de los sombreros...
This is funny for me because the white and black hats is a rather modern thing, and I thought it came from a book. But well, in the end I realized that wasn't the case. This has to do with objectivity. So we are more green hats actually, on creativity basically. There weren't any white hats or black hats in those days as such. In the first days we didn't even have the concept of security professionals. The concept of the white cats started from the creation that one decides to become a professional of this. Out of the 5, there's only one who does security professionally, that is Antonio. The rest have evolved in the world of security. But the people who are specifically on security, then we have the need to label, to use a label. Well, that is a security. So if we talk about all the colors of hats, there's a huge range, a purple hat, whatever, and then that trend will disappear and it will be superseded by another one. It's like trying to put a label on, I don't know, distributed systems, whatever, you can call it any way, but people have to put labels.
Eran los mismos. O sea, igual un día estabas protegiendo un sistema que al día siguiente estabas viendo a ver cómo hundías ese mismo sistema. Era,
sí, además lo dice Andreu, cuando eres sysadmin y tienes una mentalidad...
If you have a hacker mentality, well, I was having dinner with my friends and I try that during the day when nobody sees me, I can play my things. We had freakers who called us on the phone, crackers who broke software, hackers who hacked computer systems. SL, slip, raise the hand those who know what slip PPP is. Yes, you too. Well, I also worked in a company. The first invoice my mother paid, or bill, or modem, was 40,000 pesetas, which is like almost 300 euros. Either I got something, a trick from my sleeve, because I knew that some people were not paying, or get the cable of Telefonica of the neighbor and just hook it up. So then we had a 900 baud rate scanner, and my modem, my second telephone line, started to scan at 900. So we have the 900 IBM SLP, because the 900 scanner got to a point that all of a sudden a modem woke up and said, hey, this is a slip due to the noise the modem was making. So I had another one that gave access to the internet, the IBM, but it was totally chock and block. And you had the call cards that you could buy. Or lucky you could find the server. Hackers, freakers, carvers, whatever. You got there in a mix with everybody. So you had to socialize. And famous under calls, we all got together, we all talked to each other. In Ispahack, we had Lecrim, who was quite a good hacker, and we got 900 out of a Basque newspaper. And when did they write these things? Over 10 years ago. Oh my God. Hey, come on. So we got in there, we got an IP, the user, not difficult, and you access, and you said, hey, you have a server and you have access to a LAN. And it was a newspaper. You could upload articles as simple as leaving the TXT that was formatted. So wait them to leave the TXT, and we modified the publication of that newspaper the following day. So it was really fun. So in Basque, and you had no idea what you were writing, but anyway, people had a laugh with this. So what can you do when you're 16 years old? What else are you going to do? Get serious? Just like the Hercules router, or a million other things. When you hacked the web of the, I believe it said the Congress. We signed as Ispahack, ORG, and this was in the name of a number of people. So the police called them and said, do you manage this? No, we're from Gibraltar. So we just need to make a few questions, they say. And they said, you know, young, genuine people. And as soon as they crossed the border into Spain from Gibraltar, they were handcuffed and taken to prison. So they ended up singing, let my people go, holding the prison bars. So who has the courage to sing that there after the incredible mess we had stirred up? So in those days there were no laws to regulate that, fortunately, and nothing happened. But that case was quite well known. That day my mother really, he said, what are you doing with that computer, taking it all away, and all those diskettes? What are you doing with all that? I said, no, don't worry, I just scrubbed the room clean. No, I didn't do anything, you know, I'm going to the bar to have a drink with my friends. We really got a bit over the top there. And that's where I met Jumbie. He called me all sorts of words. So we have to attack countries that don't have extradition treaties, that kind of thing. So we come back to the same thing. Everybody who has their age and did this kind of thing, they must be fed up of linking the computer with a 910. So in the middle of the night, at the middle of the night, you got calls from a call center or from the police and say, my God, you have the user access to networks. Others, well, we just use the T900 and you just gained access. You have more lucrative enterprises in which you could set up your own little corner. When we have the 56 modems, that was hyper speed. It's like, levitation almost, going from 33.6. But in InfoVia, the network, we didn't have 56K, so we had calling cats with a lot of money, and I think my parents bought me the 56K modem and saying, okay, what can we do now? We called the United States, so we entered it there at 56Ks, negotiated at 56K with a call, and those were the things you did. I think there was no maliciousness in this. The other day I thought of dialing 999-0111 and it's still there. There was a number for a modem apparently. Okay, let's open the round of questions from the public. Don't be too bad, bad with the questions. We have the microphones there on the stand, so just shoot. Using the microphone for the translation. I imagine you're bored of hearing me all day long.
Nadie se atreve a hacer ningún comentario, ninguno de los abuelitos de la sala.
None of the grandparents or godfathers in the floor want to say anything? I feel old, he says. I think I'm from your same period and we've experienced similar things like Ramol, Fidenet, Bicon, Infovia, all these names, X81. So it was the same machine but with a red and black keyboard. The sysadmin were learning actually. It wasn't a profession at that point. I think that was the cause for many failures. So many learned later on with Infovia to set up their own ISP, which was our case as well. First we set it up. When Infovia wasn't working, Jordi set up a modification of the Acer and a server that was called Banana, and we had Infovia Plus before Telefonica, so they ended up calling us and asking what were we doing. And then there's a story I always tell that in my place, my neighbors would look at me in the street and point me with a finger and saying, this guy has a computer in his house. So anyway, thank you for sharing. Another question. Well, I've also read the stories of Merced, and someone mentions the story of Millennium, so I wanted to ask any of those who are here, if anyone of your friends, I don't know if there was, if you were inside, and why did you start throwing the hard disks away? It's more the left side of the seats, the Millennium operation. And anyway, I threw a number of hard disks to the deepest river in Spain. So I wasn't involved in those days. And Apostles, Ricky and me, we had a search made. They called us in the morning and said, police, knocking on the door with some sort of warrant for a search. We were really scared because we thought it was about a stupid thing, not about what we had been doing in the past evenings. Someone thought to put an advert selling DB3 with manuals of instructions. So then we got the police. So we had all the papers of the printer that were going all over the place, and they were looking for diskettes for the DB2. I was working with a lawyer of the VSA in those days, Javier Rivas. I'm talking about 1989. I don't know if it was the VSA or the equivalent of those days. Also forensics, computer forensics in those days were not what they are now. I'm sure they didn't even know what the telex or the PROCOM was about, or that they had locked files or anything of the sort. Another question from the floor.
Hola.
Hello? How are you, Jordi? Can't see you, I'm sorry. I'll see you later. I have a subject, but I'd like to bring to mind a story that we were doing the IRC, and someone made an asterisk, steel asterisk, and with over 2,000 users connected in the first tests, you ended up alone in the network. Is that how it was? Yeah, we called someone on the phone and said, what happened here? I'm sure I must have removed it. Yes, after a while you did. And on another evening, the net ended up with 6 or 7 nodes. Anyway, I have a topic I'd like to discuss with you. When I talk about security, sometimes I like to comment about a term that is used nowadays that is very redundant in my view. I don't know what you think, which is ethical hacking. Very redundant. I always say that this is a redundant term because a hacker was born ethical, is ethical, and I think will continue to be ethical, beyond the fact that in some cases, like in Indonesia, it was highly ethical. Then the Indonesian government thought otherwise. But I just wanted to leave this note so that you can comment on it if you'd like. Well, I remember a story with the back of the DNS, together with Jordi actually. Jordi said, Andreu, look what I've got. And he showed me a games injector that injected the DNS. When we got into the hacker area, you could see it that way. So I remember that in those days, the boss was someone that's called Bokuf, I believe. Boku.deck.arrakis.s. And said, Doku, I told him, you haven't got the balls to do a hack here. So he shot himself in his foot, actually. So apart from that, the backup of the DNS, the only one that was left was a user who didn't patch the DNS. So I tried it out in a place where we started finding firewalls, and was quite impressive. But the potential that we have lost at the level of security, I think we should continue our research in this field. I like programming and reversing. I enjoyed it very much, but then it started boring me, so I prefer to program. Did you spend a good time with the X station? Yes, and with other things as well. I'm nobody in that environment. There are people who know a lot more than me, who patched the BIOS and a number of things. So the level is quite impressive. The first router I saw, I was in awe because I thought I have to protect this from these guys. And the fact is that there's a lot of level, high level in this country, and by that I include the entire country, including Catalonia. So you can see that there are no limits. It's not on just the Kingdom of Aragon. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Not only the Kingdom of Aragon. So, for me, there are no borders in this, and there never will be. I have this political issue, but it's very different to what many people think, and I hope many people will get to feel that, because we would do things differently. We had a lot of fun with many things that Jordi did. So when they started patching, some of them allowed you to do that, but you had to make a modification. So it is within the framework. But you thought, okay, I will inject this in the DNS. So I said, why? Because you just enjoy doing it. When you connected, the first thing that you got from Windows, the blue screen of death, and then there was a bot that is called Nosfer that every now and then you just dropped it into an IRC and made a free audit, public audit, in the IRC channel. So you try to get into it, if it could get into. There were many ways to get into Windows through Linux. If you access the password file, it would corrupt them, and then it entered again into the channel. So in those days it was different. I remember reading about stories. There was an interview of a telecommunications venture, and in those days they would just had IP addresses, and through the red bio you had the entire list. So in 30 minutes we had 30 people, and 25 of them had the entire hard disk list on the machine, including calling calls, all the logs. So they had a machine where the DNS was 127.0.0.0.1. Says, I'm going to delete your disk. So they ended up deleting their own hard disk. It was quite usual. They came with the open server thing, and you said, I have just scanned, and you have all these things open, all these ports open. I was thinking, there you go. So if you don't do this, I will delete your hard disk. So they did it before you did it. So I'm deleting your hard disk, and then you have a sort of kind of blue message or whatever. Ping.com, ping.comics.es, something like that. I used to work with Ramon in those days, so they took me through the bad way. So last question, and let's go for beers. Okay, any other question, a risky question? What comes next? What's the next thing you do when you become ancient like you? Then we're just about to die like you. We can go out for dinner. You can come to Zaragoza to have a good dinner. or to do some mischief. I'd love to make some mischief, actually.
Ver a los buenos amigos.
So, to see the good friends.
Lo que queda, yo, mira que ya te digo, me he movido poco, ¿no?
I have moved not
Y cuando he llegado, me ha costado
very much. I had to spend an hour like to get here. And with this, I summarize what you get from this community. In the end, what I have got is love and tears. I was talking to people, and the tears were coming down my face. So this renders me speechless. There are no words, and this is what you can take with you. So now what? Well, now I have some free time, not like before. Well, I'm a self-made person. I'm in a free university, so I registered at an open university for a Python course. Lots of fun. So I'm always curious and willing to investigate. So I wish we would have had meta-exploits in those days. You're so lucky, you guys. I like to study, well, administrative law. In all the jobs we have, it was electronic signature blockchain. So it's talk on lawyers who don't understand a thing about computer, and you have to explain computer law to them. When things are law is very detached from computers. Borja was talking about this earlier, the previous speaker. I'm considering running for the Senate. Now, I think I'm the perfect candidate for the Ministry of Truth. Okay, any final comment? Something that can inspire the audience? I think that passion. Anything you do, put passion into it. I tell this to young kids in 6th grade and to managers. If you put passion, there are no limits other than those you set for yourselves. Do things with passion, and you can get as far as you like. That's what I have learned for myself after the accident, and when I learned the hard way. So passion, enthusiasm, and sharing information. You will get as far as you like. And also management of frustration. In the day-to-day, you get a lot of frustration if you try to do something and it doesn't work out, so you have to manage your level of frustration, because you get to a point in which you reach the conclusion that you have to go in a dead track, so then you have to manage that. The company I work on, we have many cases in which we cannot find the information that should be there. So there's a lot of frustration until if you go over the weekend and you have a few drinks and you have a great idea. Eureka! I've been working 1 week trying to get something going from 12 hours a day thinking about this, and then over the weekend when I'm having a beer, you have the great idea. It's happened to me many times that I cannot sleep when you can't go anymore, that you sleep and then you dream that you're working. So then you wake up and you remember how you fixed the problem.
You woke up and you say, I fixed it before I went to bed. So your brain gets like really cloudy. Sometimes you are the movies, and then the happy idea comes to mind, and then you get really anxious for an hour up until you get home and you get hold of your computer. So I don't even wait for the credits. All right, so Juanma. Well, I am a father of a 10-year-old. I'm telling him that those who I will tell him that he wants to do something, he's got a curiosity for something, he should go ahead with it. But if he's not interested in IT, no problem, he shouldn't go into it. He should do whatever he loves to do. And as Andreu said before, so what we did was relatively easy compared to what you are doing nowadays. So Ramon, please. Well, I share what they said. So my eldest son, he's not very much into technology, whereas my daughters are 14 and 22, and they are technology oriented, so they can do anything that they would like to, and then put passion into what you like to do. If you are into this business because it's a profitable business and there is potential, there is a future to it, more than being a COBOL programmer. Yeah, well, COBOL programmers make good money, but people should not work for money, should not do this for money. So you will never become an actual real hacker if you just do it for the sake of money. So you have to do it with passion and never feel or never believe that you cannot do it. You may postpone it for half a day, but do not throw the towel. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. It's been very good. Thank you very much.